Hello, check, check. Hit your button. There's a little button.
Hello.
Hello? Yep.
Whew. Yes, queen.
Hi, yes.
Yeah.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started at 7:13. Do you want to do roll call first?
Board Member Blake. Board Member Deal.
Here.
Board Member Ayers.
Here.
Board Member Moore.
Here.
Board Member Romo, absent. Board Member Salguero.
Here.
Board Member Sutton.
Here.
Board Vice Chair Luby.
Here.
And Board Chair Smashhide.
Here. So we're going to call to order, and I have to talk to you for a second. I have this very special pink gavel that my sister Karen got for me on a very bad day. It was shipped to me, and it was one of the greatest gifts ever. And she said that if there's anyone that needs a pink gavel, it was me. So thank you, Karen. Love you. If we could go over the agenda first. There's a couple of items that we need to change. So item 6A's She Angels is going to be tabled until December. And then we've got item 6B, the Domestic Violence Awareness and Advocacy presentation. We're going to move that into new business. And then we've got item 7A, the legislative and advocacy, and we're going to move that item before new business. Hernan Molina's going to be here to speak with us. So the thing is, this evening, depending on when our guests arrive to speak, we may have to move things around a little bit. But just so you know, we're going to be a little fluid, which goes really well in our city, so I think we should be fine. So if I can get a motion on an approval of the agenda.
A motion to approve.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We have an agenda, ladies. Okay, and then also, can I have you guys go over the minutes from the last meeting, please? And then let me know when you are done. By a motion.
A motion?
Yeah, that'd be great.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the Thursday, October 25th, 2018 meeting.
Can we
I'll
get?
second that.
Thank you. And then can I get all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have approval of our last minutes. We are so good. And then now we have public comment, which we will have people come up and they can speak up to 3 minutes. And we have the wonderful Noemi Torres. Hi.
Hello.
Oh, there's 2 of you. I'm sorry.
I'm Giovanna Healy.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you all. Good evening. I am a co-founder of Sisters of Strength, a nonprofit organization whose priority is to give support and education to single mothers across Los Angeles area.
And my name is Noemi Torres. I miss you, ladies. I started to support this organization not only because my mom is a single mom, but also this amazing woman has been such a great mom to her daughter, but also wants to support other single moms. And we are having a meet and greet at our fabulous V Wine Room tomorrow night. It's going to be between 6 and 8, and it would be amazing for you ladies to be there. We're going to have a little speech around 7 p.m., so you can come at any point, but probably most likely better to be there around 7. So we'd love to see you there, and we'll be coming back and looking for support from you ladies in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that is all we have for public comment. So then now we're going to go on to new business. And so the first thing we have up is we're going to discuss item A, NCJW LA Annual Roe versus Wade commemoration. We're going to discuss participation and support of the annual Roe v. Wade event sponsored by the National Council of Jewish Women LA in conjunction with a coalition of organizations which commemorates the anniversary of the landmark Supreme Court decision legalizing abortion in the United States. So what we really kind of need to do today in regards to this item is we need to talk about the designation of a point person in regards to this event.
Well, I would like to offer to be that point person. Amanda Bleish and I have been attending. Amanda is representing Hollywood Now on the planning committee, and I've been also attending the planning committee meetings. We've had 2 so far, and I would love to represent the WAB on that committee.
Is there anything you want to update us on those meetings?
Sure.
Okay.
There's a date, I believe it's January 17th,
Okay.
which is a couple days before the Women's March.
Okay.
We agreed on a format for the event. So it's going to be, it's not going to be a rally this year like it was 2 years ago. It's going to be more of what they usually do, which is an indoor event. So there's going to be a program in the auditorium. The program is going to focus on storytelling. And so it's going to be stories about women encountering challenges and obstacles while trying to end a pregnancy. And that's going to be followed by some breakout sessions.
Okay.
So people who want to like connect to become activists, there'll be something for them. People who want to share their own stories, there'll be a room for them. So we're still parsing out like what the different breakout rooms are going to be, but that's basically the format. So the auditorium program will probably be an hour long, and that includes introductions, the storytelling, and, wrapping things up. And then it'll be another hour for the breakout sessions.
Okay.
And it'll be held like in the past at NCJW LA. And yeah. And they're very excited about the continued participation of the Women's Advisory Board and the City of West Hollywood in this event.
They haven't expressed anything that we need to do other than...
Well, at some point, they usually ask for some kind of contribution through the sponsorship, and this would go to the city, not to the WAB.
Okay.
So
So it's something we have to actually do ourselves? or is it
What
we-
they would love from us is our participation. And I did mention that that this group really does like to participate and get involved in this event, and to think of us when thinking of like for the check-in table, for anyone who wants to usher people to different rooms, to participate in the room facilitation. So so definitely they're keeping us in mind for that kind of involvement should we choose to pursue it.
So that's January 17th.
Yes.
If we want to, if we want to mark our calendars, if we want to be there. And then Karen's going to be our point person.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that we need to discuss on that item?
I would like to say that I'm happy to volunteer. I really enjoyed working at the event last year and being involved. So if you need any extra hands, please let me know.
Okay, great.
I'm in as well. Karen?
Excellent. Okay.
Hold on. I don't want to say yes until I know. You guys can all make fun of me and my old-timey calendar, but it works, man.
I think I'd like to make a motion
Okay.
to move forward with the Roe v. Wade commemoration with NCJW in the form of co-sponsorship from what we've just laid out.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hooray. Okay, So then we are going to go on to our next item of new business, which is local implementation of the United Nations Convention of the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, also known as CEDAW. This will be a presentation about the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, an international Bill of Rights for Women adopted in 1979 by the UN General Assembly, and the efforts of local cities to implement it locally in their jurisdictions. And the fabulous Larissa is going to update us on this.
Thank you. I will update you, and hopefully really, really briefly about this so that you have more time to discuss some other items. But in your packet are 2 pieces of paper referencing CEDAW. And for those of you who are less familiar, it was just an attempt to kind of give you the basic information about CEDAW and the status and the city's participation in CEDAW. So there's 2 sheets. One references the history of CEDAW, and the other one is about San Francisco's participation in CEDAW and sort of some of the things that they've done and their benchmarks as a model to reference. And just taking a really basic description of CEDAW, it's the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and it's the only international human rights treaty to focus exclusively on the rights of women. Unfortunately, the United States is one of 7 member states and the only industrialized nation that has not ratified CEDAW. However, we're going to talk a little bit about what's known as cities for CEDAW. So it's an international treaty, but in 1998, the city of San Francisco became the first city in the world to adopt an ordinance reflecting the principles of CEDAW. And in doing so, they made a commitment to building an infrastructure to foster and move forward and advance the status of women in a very systematic way following this treaty. So, and they've really and they also created a framework and really simplified it so that even though it was designed for nation states, taking it to a very basic local level, how can you take these principles and adapt them? And they really streamlined it down. So the key aspect is doing a gender analysis of all aspects of city government and how it impacts women and supports women, from workforce to programs to budget, and doing this, and through this analysis, looking to the areas where you can improve in supporting women. And so that's like one of their key elements. And then if you go to the second page of this 2-page document, you'll see some of the great achievements that they've had. I mean, they've been doing it almost a good 20 years now. And the first one is probably particularly relevant. I won't go through all of them, but as you can see, they actually had a period of time from 2011 to 2014 where they had 44 months without domestic violence homicide. So through a cross-agency approach to domestic violence response led to a record 44 months without a single domestic violence homicide through 2011 to 2014. They also created a toolkit for others. One of them was the Gender Equality Principles Initiative, and they identified gender principles that can be applicable within the greater community, particularly within the private sector. So they did start with themselves in doing this gender analysis and looked across the board at how they can improve services, how they looked at gender parity, and how moving forward they can build that into their infrastructure. But then they also looked to the community and sharing that information. So those are just a couple of the things that they've done. But they've, and another aspect of implementation that they've identified, and different cities are doing different things, but they also look to having a oversight body. So it's great to have these principles, it's great to say you're gonna do this, you do your gender analysis, but how do you really move forward with implementation? And another key element is having some type of oversight body that helps make it all happen. and helps keep the process going. And so they spent many, many years doing that. They have a commission on the status of women. They also have a department on the status of women. So they've really made a huge commitment. And then more recently, the city of Los Angeles has done something similar. Some of you may be familiar with that. They adopted the principles of CEDAW and integrated with the development of a multi-year status of women report. And right away, Mayor Garcetti did roll out aggressive changes across city government to implement CEDAW, utilizing both the gender analysis process mandated through CEDAW as well as doing a status of women report. So it's sort of actually dovetailing to your next item about the status of women report, and it's also why we brought it up, is moving forward as far as a strategy to update the next status of women report for the city of West Hollywood. We were looking to utilize CEDAW as a model as well as a tool. And in doing so, we would be, the city also, a few years ago, after this report, our Status of Women report was first issued, looked to, actually it was a recommendation from this board to getting involved with cities of CEDAW and doing a local implementation of CEDAW. And so there is actually this campaign that's been going on since 2014 of Cities for CEDAW. So San Francisco started it off, and then they also helped launch this national campaign to get local cities involved. And so LA is one of the largest cities that's been involved, but there's cities across the country, large and small, that have either adopted ordinances or resolutions committed to CEDAW. And the city likewise has adopted a resolution to do the local implementation. And so I guess another way to think of CEDAW is, or as a strategy, is as at the last year, you all have been active involved in the campaigns to pass the ERA. And some of the impetus behind that, the motivation behind that, to do that and to revisit that, is to once and for all have something definitive about women's rights and women's equality as part of the Constitution, and seeing that as a fundamental gain. Similarly, and this is like a global reach with it in terms of its impact, but saying, hey, you know, this treaty addresses so many things that we're trying to address across the board in all these different areas, but it's one way, if you make this commitment, you're going to see some change. And so it's predicated on that. So you, on the one hand, we have the ERA, and on the other, we have CEDAW, our instruments and tools to help with addressing gender inequities. So that's why we're just revisiting this now, because we also want to move forward with moving forward with that local implementation here in West Hollywood, and also integrate it with an update to the report on the status of women in West Hollywood.
Because that's often what we talk about. What's the point of collecting all the data and having all these reports if you don't do anything with them? So this gives us like a tool to take the data in which we're collecting and actually like create change like they did in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable what they did in San
I know,
Francisco.
right? The second page is like my favorite thing.
44 months without domestic violence,
That's like
homicide.
not a small period of
Yeah.
time in a very big city.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that update on that, Larissa. We don't actually need to do anything on that right now. It was more of just bringing it to the forefront so that it's kind of like on the back burner of our brains when we're doing things, of places where CEDAW would come into effect. Or like think of ways in which we could do cool things like San Francisco did. And then now we are going to move on to item C, the report on the status of women in West Hollywood. And we're going to review and discuss the report on the status of women in West Hollywood report. Dun, dun, dun.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, I just wanted to suggest one thing before we dive into this. This is for you to discuss as you desire for some length, but I was also also under new business, moved up to the end, but maybe all the speakers are here.
Oh,
If you
yeah,
would
yeah.
like to take that item,
Okay.
and I wanted to hand you information, or we have.
So what do we want to do the domestic violence one or the legislative one first?
The domestic violence.
Okay. Awesome.
And, yes.
So scratch that. We're going to do that in a minute. So what we'll do first is we're going to do a domestic violence awareness and advocacy. And the board is going to receive a brief presentation about domestic violence and victimization within the family court system. And then we're going to do a discussion about ways to advocate for the safety of women and children. And we have speaking with us Roman James and Letitia Settle. If you would like to come up, thank you so much for being here with us. And I hope I pronounced your names correctly, and I'm so sorry I sound so terrible.
My name is Latia Subtle.
Latia, hi.
Hi, I'm Roman James.
Hi, welcome.
Okay, I'll start. As you know, my name is Roman, and I am here by invitation of Melanie Luby. So before I make my statement, because I did write it out to keep it concise, what I am here about to bring awareness of, I want to thank Melanie for making this opportunity available to Latia and I. I know it's cliche to say all you need is love, but that is precisely what you showed us by taking the time out of your day, which I'm sure is a very busy schedule, to listen to our experiences. Your willingness to listen with an open heart not only made this platform available to us, but created a pathway to more consciousness and awareness around an issue that is, in my perspective, being deliberately buried. So I thank you. You are much appreciated. I also want to thank Larissa for helping me by printing out some of the documents that you guys are receiving. I also have a set of documents that I wanted to include with the things that you already should have.
If you guys want to turn into your packets a little bit more in the back, there's this one, it starts with this one that's blue, and then it's the two following after that one too. So sorry.
No problem. Your willingness to support us by going above and beyond to print out these documents is another love offering, and I just want to say I am in gratitude. So to begin, today I'm going to speak about an issue that is triggering in some ways for a lot of people, at least the people that we've had opportunities to discuss this issue with. And whether you have experienced it through your own lives or have vicariously encountered this issue via personal relationships or in the context of your profession or professional duties, people have built up certain perceptions and walls that may or may not be founded in the truth. With that being said, I want to make a disclaimer. What I'm about to speak about is not an indictment of men or fathers. I have known far too many good, even great fathers to think that way. What I am about to elucidate for you is not about bashing men, but making you aware of how domestic violence is influencing society in ways that you may or may not be familiar with, and also to give you another perspective on the issue. There are many numbers that I will recite today that can be verified either through the documents that I have provided or through your own research. My only intention is to make a connection between my own personal story, thereby humanizing the issue, and that of the greater dynamic, because we are at a critical juncture. And I hope to debunk a lot of mythology around the issue. I am here to speak truth to power, and if what I say is disturbing or uncomfortable to you in any way, then I ask that you check in with yourself and figure out why that is. I am also asking that people like yourselves who are in positions to think critically about the issue, brainstorm solutions, and implement policy change, listen to what I have to say with the same willingness to hear and compassion to listen with an open heart that Melanie did. Again, my name is Roman, and I am a survivor of domestic violence. It took me a while to accept that idea because, one, I was not physically abused. I didn't have black eyes or cracked ribs or broken bones. I also was not married to my abuser or in a long-term relationship. I got away from my abuser after being involved with him a sum total of 97 days. However, I did not get away scot-free. I had an unplanned pregnancy by this man who I would come to find out has a documented history of abuse against women and has had legal consequences for his crimes. Because I have a child by this man, whom I got away from when I realized that I was being emotionally and psychologically abused and recognized that it had the potential to turn physical, I thought I was free and clear. I have learned over the course of the last 5 years of my child's life that my nightmare was just beginning. The reason it took me so long to accept that I was a DV survivor is because my abuse did not look like what I had always heard it to be, but also because I had attorneys who did not believe in my abuse and stalking. I had friends who questioned my credibility because they had never experienced what I was going through. And finally, I had a whole legal industry, and still do, that disputes the veracity of my claims because this man appears normal and was in the courts fighting for his child with everything he has. He loves his child now, I would be told by Judge Anna Maria Luna in Department 14 at the George Deukmejian Courthouse, despite evidence to the contrary. Over the course of nearly 4 years before Judge Luna, I have experienced violations to my constitutional rights, my civil rights, and my rights as a parent. But it didn't begin with her courtroom. It actually began in Judge Lori Behar's courtroom in Department 12 of the same courthouse. On my very first appearance in her courtroom, due to his seeking full physical and legal custody of the child that he suggested I did not earn enough money to have, which was not true, the child he refused to sign the birth certificate for, and the birth certificate coordinator provided us a declaration that stated he would not sign it. The newborn that I was only supposed to see from Saturday at 8 a.m. to Sunday at 7 p.m., 3 weekends out of the month, and the 4th weekend would be at his discretion. Judge Lori Behar said to me, after I stated that he is abusive in response to one of her initial questions, well, you should have thought of that before you had a baby with him. I did not know at the time how much of a predictor that would be on my experience through the family court system. Although it is not an exclusive providence of men, many controlling and abusive men who happen to be fathers are now using the court system to maintain control over former partners through children. I would just like to give some quick statistics to frame the experience of many abused women like myself and Latia. And to be sure, women are not the only people who suffer from domestic violence, but they are the overwhelming majority. Most mothers have primary custody of their children because men don't fight for it. But when they do, they get it the majority of the time. Nationally, fathers who pursue full physical and legal custody are getting it 72 to 74% of the time. In California, that number is 85%. Immigrant families are not the only people who are being separated from their children. Americans, often victims of domestic violence, are being separated from their children as well. Because domestic violence numbers mirror the numbers of what is taking place in the family courts, it is mostly women. Mothers who are losing access to their children and their ability to protect their children from further abuse. It is estimated that yearly 58,000 children are awarded to an abusive parent. It is documented that upwards of 90% of the men who seek full custody, not shared custody, when I say full, I mean they have the child the majority of the time, through the courts are controlling, if not outright abusive. This is documented through analysis of court records and litigants by articles written by the Leadership Council on Child Abuse and Interpersonal Violence. I've provided you a document from that organization. And there has also been much research done by many other authorities and entities on the matter. The reason why policymakers like yourselves should be concerned about familial matters is because it is spilling over outside of family units. Domestic violence is now closely correlated to mass murders. We are all familiar with public mass shootings that have taken place everywhere from San Bernardino to Las Vegas to Livingston, Texas to Orlando. But what you may not be aware of is the fact that the shooters all had DV in their backgrounds. The most recent mass shooting in Thousand Oaks is being investigated for whether or not the shooter chose that location because he was looking for his ex-girlfriend who would often go there. How does this form of violence connect to the ongoing litigation and judicial abuse that I and Latia and many other women are experiencing in Judge Luna's courtroom specifically? According to the Center for Judicial Excellence, which is a watchdog group in Northern California, 52 children have been killed during the disposition of divorce, child custody, and child support in the state of California between 2008 to 2018. Familicide, which is when one parent kills members of their immediate family, as in the case of Shannon Watts in Colorado, where her husband strangled her, killing her and the baby she was carrying, plus their two children, before dumping their bodies. That form of homicide is a lesser-known form of mass murder, but that form of homicide happens at least once per week. I do not have time to go into all of the experiences that I've had with the father of my child, but I can tell you that I would not wish my experience within the family courts of California on my worst enemy. I would not be here putting myself, my ability to be in my child's life, and my personal trauma on public display, especially with the knowledge that he will attempt to use anything against me, if I wasn't truly in fear of the outcomes I am familiar with through other mothers and my own personal knowledge. Going before judges who are given crash courses in family dynamics before adjudicating the lives of vulnerable children and women is an unnecessary evil. Many of these judges are not well trained enough to recognize personality disorders or coercive control and domestic violence. Oftentimes, they rule against the victims, who are considered the protective parent, who are often women or mothers, because it is worse to accuse than to abuse. That is a statement coined by attorney and legal director Paul Griffin of Child Justice Incorporated, a nonprofit that litigates custody matters that become abusive in the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area. I know that West Hollywood does not have courts. I know that West Hollywood doesn't make law at the state level. However, what I do know is that there are cracks being made in this pernicious and nefarious issue. This is not about parents' rights, as some groups have tried to make it about. This is a matter of using litigation to control and disable another parent. The fathers' rights movement has succeeded in persuading the judicial system that this is a matter of their parental rights. But if you look at the documentation on what is actually going on within the courts, you will see that that is by far false. If you go and sit in a courtroom, you will come to understand that this is an issue about coercive control and litigation abuse, which is the least understood form of domestic violence. In closing, I want to ask the members of this committee to look at how you can lead on this issue, how you can create cracks in the corruption of the family court system, because to be sure, it is an incomprehensibly nefarious and pernicious system that is putting children and many women in harm's way. While there are fathers who have similar experiences with litigation and judicial abuse, I am asking you to look at this problem deeper than from what you thought you knew. The vexatious litigation that I have experienced, which encompasses over 60+ appearances in 4 years, has compromised my ability to hold a job as a college graduate who has no drug use or arrest in my background, and my ability to maintain stable housing after the debt accumulated from being forced to fight to be in my own child's life. This kind of violence is tearing our society apart. Even if you only see domestic violence in the various forms it takes place it takes as a public health matter, because it is now spilling over into other people's lives. I implore you to not look past it. Don't turn a blind eye, like many judges do, to what is happening at this level, because you believe there's nothing that can be done about judges. These people are public servants, not God, and they should be held accountable for the trauma that they are helping to engender. Thank you.
Wow, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Would you guys, thank you. Would you also want to speak to the House Congressional Resolution 72 that you brought to our attention as well?
Yes, so I gave you this document which details, this is something that I pulled off the website for the Center for Judicial Excellence. And last year, we worked together with this organization here in Los Angeles because being that they're in Northern California, they do a lot of work with the state, but they really hadn't developed a reach into Southern California, and I was, through my own efforts, connected to them. And Latia and I had already spoken to my representative, Karen Bass. And that was probably in July of last year. When I got connected with the Center for Judicial Excellence and the California Protective Parents Association, they were, in a week's time, coming here to do a screening for a documentary, which we've already shared with Melanie, called What Doesn't Kill Me, and it's about the issue with mothers and the courts in the United States. And so I made them aware that Karen Bass was having a forum, which she does, I think, quarterly. And so we went there to talk about House Congressional Resolution 72. HCOM Resolution 72 is basically designed to provide oversight to the courts across the country to put child safety before anything in the disposition of divorce, custody, support. There is, within the resolution, pointers for how it can be done, but because it's not law, there's nothing specific. The great thing is it finally did pass. We were able to get Karen Bass to be a co-sponsor of the resolution along with Maxine Waters. And it was passed at some point earlier this summer, I think in July.
September 25th,
okay.
2018 is when it was passed in the House.
Okay.
She said September 25th. Did you guys hear?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
And then that coincides with legislation that was signed off on by Governor Brown, that also serves to protect children within California. But again, it's sort of very fluid and ambiguous. I think that there are things that can be done. One of the things that I'm hoping to get enacted is a law that was recently passed in Tennessee that was designed to stop stalking by way of the courts, which basically is litigation abuse. That law in Tennessee came about because one of the lawmakers recognized as a former judge that many abusers were using the courts in a very vexatious way. In one instance, there was a mother, a woman who was a school teacher who was married to an attorney. Her husband tried to kill her 3 times. The third time, he used a undercover detective who he thought was a hitman. And so he's serving in prison 30 years. But while he's in prison, he's continuing to file motion after motion. This woman has accumulated $100,000 in legal fees while he's in jail. And this is the point that we're talking about in terms of how it affects us.
Yeah.
I am a college graduate. I used to be a paralegal. I can't even deal with law because I'm literally triggered by it.
Understandably.
It sounds crazy,
No,
but
it does not.
I was working The last job was supposed to be temp to perm, and I was working at CBS in the legal department, and I would be in the stairwells crying because I was just overwhelmed. And that was 2 years ago. Since then, I've been an Uber driver because you can't maintain a job if you're in court every month.
No.
You can't maintain a job if you're having to not only go to court, but to prepare by going to your lawyer's office. I was in court in April of 2014 4 times in 1 month.
Wow.
And so I was fortunate at the time that my boss, who was an attorney, had empathy for what I was dealing with, but I eventually was laid off because he needed me in his position. And so with the litigation, with the law that was passed in Tennessee, I've been specifically reaching out to various people. Most recently, I reached out to Assembly Member Sydney Kamlager-Dove because I was directed to her by Senator Holly Mitchell. And so I'm waiting. I did hear back from someone, and then I couldn't return his call right away. Her legislative assistant, he's new to the position, so I did reach out to him last Friday, and hopefully he'll get back to me. But I think it's really important because what happens is that the judges actually incentivize the abusers by allowing them to utilize their courtrooms as their own personal revolving door and bully pulpit. One of the things that has taken place in England, because this is a pressing issue in the Western world, it extends to, because a lot of our laws are pulled over from British law, so it extends to the UK and also Australia, where this problem has become really out of hand. One of the things that they've done is to stop allowing abusers to cross-examine their victims on the stand. That's something I faced where the judge and my attorney, who I don't believe was familiar with domestic violence and coercive control, he was allowed to ask me about who a man was that I had never introduced him to, but apparently he had found out his information. The judge was more amused by the fact that he was asking a particular question than offended by the fact that I'm letting her know I had never given him this information. At that point, I was trying to let her know that he's continuing to stalk me. One of the things that happens frequently is that because you have a child, you have no rights. When Judge Lori Behar said to me that you should have thought of that before you had a child with him, that was the first of her verbal abuses, but it was very true. I was experiencing stalking. I would go to the Pacific Division on Culver Boulevard, and they would say, oh, you need to get a restraining order. And if I talked about it with my attorney, my attorneys would say, well, if you want to pursue that, then you're going to have to do it on your own. Because, again, the idea is worse to accuse than to abuse. And women, and I don't know why I didn't understand this, but women really aren't believed.
Well, and what I was thinking about while you were speaking, and when you said that, and when you actually submitted the percent of 85%, we on this board do a lot of work with the ERA, and this is one of those cases in which when you're talking about the blanket of what the ERA impacts, this is one of those things where when women go to court and it's a man versus a woman, how you're actually not getting a fair trial because you are a woman, because of the ERA not being, like, this is really one of those things that, brings it really home.
Yeah, absolutely.
Agree.
Yeah.
And to be sure, it's
And
all
especially,
women.
like, I can't believe this is happening when then there's no evidence of abuse, like you being like the children losing their mothers simply because of, like he said, she said, no actual abuse, like being pulled from your mom. It's it's insane.
Well, it's not just that
Yeah.
there's no evidence of abuse. It's that when you are a woman, and one of the things that I want to make clear, because we're two black women, it's everybody.
Yeah.
Black, white, Asian, Latino. We know, we've met a sheriff's deputy who's going through it. And it's really hard when you're dealing with a police officer. We've met a Beverly Hills doctor. I've met at least 3 attorneys who are going through it. 3 attorneys. One is a tax attorney, one is a transactional attorney, one is a corporate attorney. Women, I've met a woman who works at, in a sort of a blue-collar job for Delta, and it goes across all social-economic lines. I know a woman who's living in a gated community in Dana Point, and in our courtroom, the judge told her that she was going to level sanctions against her for continuing to seek arrearages. We're threatened, I've experienced Judge Lori Behar threatening to take my child because I said, I don't even know where he lives. She said to me, how would you like it if I gave him 90% of the time and you only had 10%? And they will act on it. And there won't be, women are held to much higher standards. There won't be any evidence on our part, but if we submit evidence, it will be buried. When I said that my constitutional rights were violated, we're denied due process to present evidence. We're denied the opportunity to provide testimony. I tried to get a restraining order, and at that point, when I said it's like having my own personal terrorist, she cut me off. According to the family code, a domestic violence hearing is supposed to be held, a motion is supposed to be held within 21 to 25 days. She held it for over a year, and she would not make any decision on it until I said, will you grant or deny it? When I tried to submit more evidence, she would not allow me to do that. And so basically what you come to understand is that you don't have any rights. And one of the things that we have learned through a domestic violence agency that was very helpful to us, we had an amazing advocate who was no longer there because she had 3 clients die through homicide over the years. And she told me she couldn't take it any longer, but she advocated tremendously on our behalf. But one of the things that we learned through her is that female judges are the worst. And I don't know what that's about, but that has been my experience. I've gotten much more due process through male judges because I've been in 4 different courtrooms. And I just have a feeling that, or a belief.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And I could honestly sit here and listen for hours, but unfortunately, we cannot.
Right, I understand.
But thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And please keep open lines of communication with us. And I'm sure Mel will keep in contact with you too in ways that, while we're going forward and doing things with our action plans and stuff, ways that we can assist or help. Like, your information is super important and helps us tremendously.
Well, if I can just say, one of the things that we talked about with Melanie is having you all view this documentary, because the documentary makes clear about
The one you mentioned called What Doesn't Kill Me. Yeah.
It makes clear how bad this problem is, and it's from the perspective of people who are authorities on the subject, attorneys, advocates, what have you.
Well, thank you, ladies, so much. We appreciate your time. So,
One thing also,
Yeah.
I introduced myself earlier. I'm a retired Army veteran, retired Chief Warrant Officer. And one thing that I mentioned to Melanie was that this is also affecting women veterans. Like she mentioned, like it's affecting women across the board, no matter what their professions are. But I honorably served in the military, and the number of suicides among the veteran community is between 20 to 22 per month. This issue with the children dying with cases that are in the family law court, is now up to 657 children that have been murdered by a parent since 2008 up until now. So within that number, there are veterans. I'm a veteran. I also don't have a criminal record. I've never been arrested. I don't do drugs. I don't drink, don't smoke, never have. But in the family court, you know, as she stated, we're treated like criminals. We don't have any rights. I've spent over $100,000. I've spent my life savings on attorneys and experts in the court. So one thing I had mentioned to Melanie was the idea of the veterans courts opening up to see more veterans, to see the families and children, because right now the way it's set up, you have to have a criminal conviction in order to be seen in a veterans court. Criminal conviction and a substance abuse problem or a mental health problem. So there are veterans that don't have a criminal conviction but are being treated like criminals in the veterans court and using their VA compensation. The VA compensation is given to them for their disabilities, injuries that they've incurred while on military duty. But now they're having to pay it to lawyers and court experts, and then their children are still going through that trauma. So it seems that the eligibility criteria for veterans courts needs to open up to not just those that are convicted of a crime, but also those that have a disability, traumatic brain injury, sleep apnea, post-traumatic stress disorder, and not just limit to those that have already been convicted, because there's veterans that are being treated like criminal and, you know, they're being separated from their families. So that's an idea I brought to her attention. Another one that...
I'm so sorry. It's just, we have all the data here and appreciate all of it, but we have a bunch of items we have to move on to.
Okay, I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I appreciate it, and it's important information to get.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so now we will move on to the report on the status of women in West Hollywood. And now we can see why it's so important that we look at the report of status of women in West Hollywood. We are going to review and discuss this. And if you guys want to go to your handout, which is the burgundy one. Yeah, oh wait, yeah. So if we want to go over first and review the findings of the report, but if we wanted to look at some sections in particular, oh yeah, sorry, Larissa.
Oh, no, I was just going to introduce the report, and you can
Okay,
you
great.
continue as you look at some
Okay.
of the items in the report.
Sorry, I was being too
And
proactive.
also, Corey will, Plank here will also jump in. So she worked on this report, so she
Thank you, Corey.
a great insight into it, the process behind the report and how it came to here, and I'm going to read sort of the canned description of it. That's pretty short, but the City of West Hollywood has released a detailed report about the women in West Hollywood. The report on the status of women in West Hollywood was published in March 2014 in recognition of Women's History Month, and it was designed to provide important information about the current state of women living in West Hollywood and to inform future city programming and policy decisions. The status of Women report is the result of direction from the West Hollywood City Council. It was prepared by the City of West Hollywood Social Services Division with a team of research consultants. The report compares women who live in West Hollywood with women who live in Los Angeles County as a whole and to men who live in West Hollywood. Researchers looked for areas of consistency and for differences that might point to assets or unmet needs among women in West Hollywood. And so some of the key report findings include, and they're embedded into the report in various sections, but women in West Hollywood are highly educated. 63% have attended some college or have a college degree, with an additional 16% having earned a graduate degree. In spite of those education levels, women in West Hollywood earned less than half of men in West Hollywood, $32,097 as compared to $68,435. West Hollywood women also earned less than women in Los Angeles County, which that statistic is $34,497. Women represent 44% of the city's total population compared to 51% of the population in Los Angeles County. 38% of women 65 and older in West Hollywood live alone, more than double the rate of women in Los Angeles County, which is 16%, and more than double the rate of men in West Hollywood, which is 18%. 3% of women in West Hollywood identify as lesbian. West Hollywood women are interested in diversity of options to create community and are interested in seeing more women in leadership positions in the city. So these are some key findings and highlights from the report. And as you go to the report and what is suggested, that kind of diving in tonight, some of you were here in 2014, but it's a smaller number of you that were here in 2014. The board has changed. At that time, the City Council gave direction to the Women's Advisory Board to review the status of the report, make recommendations on suggested updates, which that did occur back in 2014 through 2015. And moving forward at some point to update this report at an appropriate time, as mentioned earlier, looking at utilizing CEDAW as well as a tool as well to update this report. We'd like you to look at this report and talk about how, again, with fresh eyes, there's varying degrees of familiarity, but with fresh eyes, take a look at the report and have a conversation about some of the items in the report. This will just be one conversation that you'll be having, and talk about a variety of things. And tonight we're suggesting that you look at two of the sections in particular, and just take the data at face value and talk about, there's some sample questions to sort of discuss. Under the item part 2, the education, employment, and income, and then under part 3, quality of life, there's a lot of statistical information. And then I'm going to defer to Corey because currently, as you know, the city is amidst the community study process. And the last part that I didn't read about this report is that a lot of the findings for this report were derived from the U.S. Census data, and California and Los Angeles County Public Health data, Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department data, and data gathered from the extensive 2013 City of West Hollywood Community Study, which is currently being updated, and you all are participating in that process.
So this is, if you guys want to look at these items that we want to review, which is education, employment, and income, if you want to look, it's on page 15 of the report.
The income gap is shocking,
Right.
especially compared to LA County. LA County is 34,000 for women and 45,000 for men. In West Hollywood, it's 32,000 for women and 68,000 for men annually.
But why?
Just honed in on exactly what was most striking to the board and to other bodies that reviewed this information when this first was presented. That was
It was
the
like,
most
like how we are
striking
right
and
now. Like,
similar reaction.
Yeah.
The
I
most
don't think my
striking
mouth is.
and the most galling data point as the board took that in and looked to see like what kind of actions, what kind of recommendations could come to explore that a little bit further, to see about what are ways to remedy that. The kind of all the other data point to know about that is that these are people who live in West Hollywood. They don't necessarily work in West Hollywood, and so getting the data about where they work and kind of comparing that could be a little bit challenging, but
I mean, also this like line of West Hollywood has a highly educated population. 84% of men and 79% of women in West Hollywood have attended some college. Like,
Yeah.
That's insane too.
And they're all paying student loans
Right.
on different salaries.
On different salaries.
I mean, it's shocking to me, but it's also a reality that I've lived in several jobs, not my current job, but in several jobs. I've been at an income of 50,000 while every single male counterpart with the same title is making 80,000.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's
With
a real
no reason,
thing.
right?
No.
Is it like, I mean, have you guys heard this before? It's that we don't ask for raises or something that women do. Yeah, we
They
do.
justify it against us.
Why?
Yeah.
Because we could potentially have children, or like what
No,
is
they just make up reasons why.
And oftentimes it's women in the decision-making position.
making the decision that another woman shouldn't make the money,
Mm-hmm.
but that her male counterpart should. And then there's also no fail-safes or any protections to stop any of those systems from happening.
Yeah.
Just to add on to what Jenner said, I can relate in a sense coming fresh out of a master's program and starting at 50. I actually tried negotiating, and the statement was like, oh, we have a standard salary. There's no room for negotiation.
Yeah.
So that's something that might be said also at different businesses or organizations, and that prevents people from trying again or looking elsewhere because they've secured a job, and sometimes security is a lot. I mean, security, having a steady income and being able to pay off student loans are things that women are having at that time.
But there's also just gender biases that we face as women, being that we might, people often look at young women entering the workforce going, oh, well, she's likely going to have kids. And there's the thing called maternal wall that women face often. Whether or not you're even talking about having children, they just assume that.
You have a uterus?
Yeah, I mean, legitimately.
One of the ways that
Yeah.
the board and staff tried to address some of these challenges were also by proactive programming at the Women's Leadership Conference and other things, teaching about negotiation skills, having those conversations, past the point where you're just told no. What's the next? That no can't be the final answer in that conversation. Sometimes it is, and sometimes there are other opportunities or other avenues to explore. So that's one of the ways that we tried to address that particular gap and that data. One of the other pieces that the board looked at too was just more skills building and leadership development through the Women's Leadership Conference, so that people would feel more confident. Sometimes you may know that there's a gap, but you don't feel confident to go in there. And we know that a lot of people feel like, if I ask, I can't afford to lose the job, so I don't want to jeopardize the job that I'm getting not paid equally for, to ask for that because I can't afford to lose the job. And so I think giving people more skill sets, more networking opportunities, more leadership development, hopefully is something that's also empowering to them in their place of work and in those negotiations. And that if it's not working in their current employment situation, that maybe they have the confidence to go and explore other opportunities where they would be compensated more fairly. And so I think those are some of the things that we've looked at to try to address this very challenging point of data. And I know we're going to move into another report later, but the other piece is looking at that statistic about women 65 and older living alone at higher rates than men in West Hollywood, significantly higher rates, and then significantly higher rates than women in LA County as well. And that also, that there are issues about fixed incomes and others. So when the disparities are that great and then you have people living alone, that's another kind of point of consideration to think about how do we address some of those challenges for women as they age in West Hollywood as well.
Is there anything through CEDA that could help implement like an equal pay coalition or something through the Chamber of Commerce, where we have like a list of businesses that agree they will pay the same amount to women as they will to men, and kind of adopt CEDA as like a model for that?
I mean, when we were discussing CEDA, it was for exactly like you're discussing right now, is like moving forward. If it isn't it something that, like, what did San Francisco create and what can we create?
Yeah, well, also
I
there's
think
like,
it's like a jumping
the
off point.
HRC has like their equality list of employers, like the top 100 places to work if you're LGBT. Like, could we do something like that for women, an equal pay? Like the top employers in West Hollywood that are committing to equal pay or something.
When you say, can we do that? I always like to think, how do we do that?
Love that.
Yeah.
I love that for us.
Because I feel like women that we ask permission.
Yeah,
I
no
don't think
way.
we need to.
We're not
We'll
asking. How do we do this?
To touch on Jenner's point, I was just looking at the San Francisco ordinance. So the number 2 is Gender Equality Principles Initiative.
Oh, cool.
Maybe looking into what San Francisco has done and seeing what these the 7 principles are, and then maybe seeing how we can communicate that to our Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
The other shocking statistic for me was that 3% of women in West Hollywood are lesbian.
I know.
That's shocking
I know.
compared to like the male population.
I'd be interested in seeing how it's changed since
Yeah,
the
that's true,
report
'cause
first
this
came
is-
out.
yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe a page of
Well, and I'd
comparison.
also like to know, like,
When is the next report coming out?
they're doing it now, right?
They're in the
Yeah.
process, so you all participated last month in the conversation for the community study. The anticipation is that the report will be completed early 2019, that we'll have some data points before that, but the full report will be available, I don't know exactly when, but prior to May, when the RFP for social services will be released. So it should be early or springtime 2019. And that was, as Larissa mentioned, that was the kind of bulk of the data set that we were able to access was not just the census data and public health data, but also the information from the survey. That gives us information that we can't get from the census. It's West Hollywood specific. It does ask the question about LGBT population. It asks questions of gender identity, and it gets us information that we can't get from the federal census. And those
Plus
are...
our data is so unique. Like, that was one of the things when I was looking at housing issues, when I would pull reports and I would look at our statistics, they're just like, you're like, okay, here's Los Angeles, and West Hollywood is a totally different ballgame.
It's true in a lot of the data points.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, we would want to look to the completion of that community study before we would look at doing anything additional to what exists for the Status of Women report, because I anticipate, hopefully, some of these things have changed, but we'll have newer, fresher data that we can look at to help give you more information in terms of how you move forward with either, recommendations or other actions that you might want to take.
And then I don't know if you guys looked at it, but if you could look at page 22 too, about overall quality of your life for women. If you want to review that, we can look at that item too. So quality of life on this would be the things pertaining to housing, accessibility of important services, health, being close to friends, family, sharing values, feeling safe. These are elements of daily life that make a community desirable and its residents happy. So this is also like a proportion of women living in renter or owned occupied housing, West Hollywood population without health insurance.
I'd also just like to point out with the economic disparity, especially in such an LGBTQ heavy town,
Yeah.
having 2 male incomes in a household versus 2 female incomes in a household is very different based on what we've seen.
Or one female.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And, a lot of like the discussion around the disappearance of lesbian spaces and bars has to do with that. Like, there's very little disposable income in a situation like that. And I think that it's important to point out, I mean, the 3% is very low. I'm sure that that's going to rise with the new information. But that's something to consider, and especially in West Hollywood. If you doubled that, you would be looking at 60,000 versus 120,000 a year.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like, if you aren't aware of a problem, then you can't solve it.
Yeah.
So even though we don't have the answers to these problems right now, and we don't know what to do, at least we're aware of it.
Yeah,
And I think there's a power in that.
definitely.
But I think a lot of the work that we do, and I was actually on the board when, in 2014, when it was the first, right, Status of Women
Yes.
report came out. And we made a commitment at that time to consistently hit issues and create programming around issues like the wage gap.
Yeah.
And we have done that, even since everyone else has joined.
Yeah.
And I think that, I think in December, we usually go through, December, January, when we do our retreat, and we go through our work plan, and we say, okay, these are the issues that we're going to stick with, or these are new things that are going to come on. We need to we need to bring this out again, and we need to consistently make sure that we're following what we need to do in this community to make sure that women are taken care of.
That's the other thing, basically, that I want to ask you all is in the areas of education, employment, and basically all the things that we just looked at, what information about the status of women do you wish to know more of? And then what information do you find the most useful in the report to assist the board in achieving its missions and goals? So that's like you were saying, like that you said basically from the onset of when you got this data that we've kind of
Started
exactly
trying to create opportunity to change these numbers.
yeah.
One of the other pieces that's grown, and I think all of these things, there's so much intersectionality to so many of the things that we're talking about now, and we're going to talk about in a few minutes.
Because we're going to jump in a second. You're going to also talk to us about
I
the Aging
will.
in Place initiative. So if you want to just like,
We will come up with a nice segue here. One of the pieces that the Strategic Initiatives Division is also working on, in addition to homelessness and the Aging in Place initiative, is a poverty reduction initiative.
Yeah.
And so as we look at that, there has to be a lens about people who are aging, but there also has to be a lens about what are women's experiences here, because from this, women are going to be more challenged economically. And so as we look at all of those pieces, this all informs other things even beyond kind of what maybe the original intent of the report was. And so that will be something that we'll look at the data when it comes back from this new community study, but we'll look at that too. And I think that'll be an important thing to keep the board informed of and engaged with as we look at developing that poverty reduction initiative, how we can kind of impact and look at impacting women in West Hollywood as well. So there are all kinds of pieces of information that inform different initiatives and programs that are.
and I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I'm curious to know from other women on the board. Like there's parts of West Hollywood that I really love and that made me feel really safe, but I never really experienced sexism until I lived in West Hollywood. Yeah. And so I think it's an issue that we tend to kind of sweep under the rug, that there can be within the LGBT community, particularly from gay men, where they treat women a certain way.
I've been denied access to Revolver several times,
Yeah.
just purely because I'm a woman.
Yeah.
Even with gay men fighting for me to get in.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things like if we don't talk about it, then it doesn't really get addressed.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that a lot of times that in the fight for, the LGBT movement, they don't realize like how important the fight against what happens to women is important too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I'm glad I'm not alone. That was kind of scary to say because I got really like, oh
No,
no.
I mean, we don't talk about it, and it's true. I mean,
Yeah.
this is a boys' town.
Yeah.
And it's
And
a
I
real
hate
thing.
that term. To be honest with you too, somebody brought to my attention that in West Hollywood, there are the people that call West Hollywood Boys Town. And then there are the people that want to call West Hollywood the Rainbow District. And I think that's so much more beautiful because isn't the whole idea of what the LGBT movement was wanting equality, wanting a space where you could live all types of people. And when it's just one type of person living in a space, that isn't actually equality.
Yeah.
And so Boys Town is not a nice statement, in my opinion. It's a
Yeah.
very like,
And also for
yeah.
the current like cultural connotation around the patriarchy and men and what's going on, it's like it's almost damaging to gay men to have it be called a boys' town, because then it's like, well, here's your utopia, and it's still kind of dominated by only male voices.
yeah.
That's an excellent point.
Sorry, we went on a tangent, Corey. So that was amazing, but let's go on to.
Oh, I'm
item-
sorry,
oh,
can
oh,
I just make one comment?
Always?
The statistic that I came across that concerns me the most is it's a combination of things. You have the big wage disparity. You have the statistic that more women than men have significant mental health issues, and more women than men have disabilities in the city. And yet on page, goodness, 8, when it shows who's using social services, it's disproportionately men. And that concerns me, that the women who need the social services,
Why am I not seeing this? What page did you say?
8 and 9.
they aren't being, they're not aware of it, or something. It seems to be there's a disconnect in getting women who need these social services, letting them know what opportunities exist. I just find it interesting that it's disproportionately men who use the city's social services, when it seems apparent that there are so many women in the city who could use them if they wouldn't, if they knew about them.
That is such a good find, Karen.
You know what, I thought I
Yeah.
saw in here also, though, that
What? 'Cause that's, like,
women,
actually
that the
we could something
majority of
work on.
women in the city have insurance, and so I wonder if,
There's two things there that
That's one of the
that play
reasons.
into this. So that could be if people are seeking maybe mental health services through their insurance, they might be seeing private providers. The other thing is we can do a breakdown, and the Social Services Division does this 2 times a year. They do a mid-year and a year-end report on social services, and they do a breakdown of gender and who is accessing which services, because services would also count, like an HIV testing would count as a service visit, and that for West Hollywood is disproportionately male access. So there are ways where some of those numbers get thrown off a bit, because that is a quick and easy service that is disproportionately male. We can get that report and bring that information to you, so you can see the breakdown by age and by gender of who's accessing which services. So
So
whether
like
that's
data of the data.
it's sub-data, it's cross-tabs and data, and
I would love to see
can be
that.
that.
Yeah, that would be
But we
really
can bring that,
interesting.
when Social Services has their report ready that they take to Commission and the Council, we'll make sure to bring that data to
Because
you as well.
honestly, too, like, that's something that we as a board could, like, a goal in which we could honestly achieve is getting awareness in the community of the social services programs that could, like, lighten the load for women within our community.
But also to see the social services that women are utilizing, and see if that's kind of a signal to us of more work or more outreach that could be done. Like if we find that women are using a particular
Yeah.
service, then outreach opportunity there.
Are you guys cool with moving on to the Aging in Place initiative?
Yes.
We are?
yes,
Okay.
thank you.
So now we're going to move on to Aging in Place initiative, and we're basically going to kind of keep talking about stuff with Corey.
All right.
Oh, we have a thing?
You have a thing.
I love presentations.
So I will go through this part fairly quickly, and we'll be happy to answer questions. So we're going to give you more data. This is the year 2 evaluation report for the city's Aging in Place strategic initiative. That's
right
the
here.
report, yes.
Oh, it's in front of me. I'm really cute. Keep going, sorry.
Okay, so this is just information. So the city contracts with Health Management Associates to do the evaluation work for the Aging in Place initiative. So what we'll give you tonight is a little bit of background on how we do the evaluation, what we do to conduct the evaluation, some of the findings, and then we'll give you a little bit of an update on what's happening so far in year 3. So year 2 evaluation period is July 1, 2017 to June 30th, 2018. So we're about getting close to halfway through year 3 implementation at this point. That's our team from Health Management Associates. This is part of the rationale when the strategic plan for Aging in Place was created. It was created with the understanding that foundationally we would be very meticulous and thorough in ensuring evaluation across the 5 years of the strategic plan to make sure we could see what's working, what's not working. The great thing about being a small city and having some flexibility within the implementation is that we can pilot different projects, and what works we get to continue, and what doesn't we get to try something else. But it really is looking at what's working, what's not through the Aging in Place initiative. These are some of the questions that we'll cover. So this is the methodology for the year 2 evaluation. So some of you completed surveys. We sent an email survey to boards and commissioners. City staff completed surveys, as well as older adults in the community. And those surveys were available at City Hall, in the parks, at the Comprehensive Services Center, and then several social service agencies that serve older adults also had surveys available for their clients or program participants. HMA conducted interviews with city staff and program managers and received additional information from them to inform the report, the full report that you have the paper copy of. There was a content analysis done of key meetings, and what that means is that it's a very quick process just to look for keywords in minutes and agendas of city meetings and to see how many times senior or older adult or aging in place was mentioned. And so that's just a quick content analysis just to give a little bit of a picture. You'll see in the report documentation of program activities, different changes in the organizational structure that impacted the Aging in Place initiative, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the implementation that's already happening. So you all know we have this new division, Strategic Initiatives. That's the division that I'm managing now that has the Homeless Initiative, the Aging in Place Initiative, and the Poverty Reduction Initiative. We also are home to the LA County Lesbian and Bisexual Women's Health Collaborative, and we provide staff support for the Women's Advisory Board and Lesbian and Gay Advisory Board. And all of those, along with these other departments, the Arts Division, Facilities and Recreation, Housing and Rent Stabilization, Social Services, Planning and Development Services, all play a role in the implementation of the city's Aging in Place initiative. So these are some of the highlighted activities. These are included in your report. Everything from a senior studio class, art classes for older adults to work specifically with local artists. This was designed to be pretty focused in scale, so there were 3 people per class working with a local artist to develop their opportunities for art making. One of the findings was that people wanted to find more art making opportunities as older adults, and so the Arts Division has taken some of those programming opportunities right into like housing core buildings or senior buildings so they can provide those opportunities where people live. We also, some of you were familiar with the Seniors in Action program. Social Services Division helped provide some initial support for that. That was a pilot project that has gone incredibly well. And at the last Senior Advisory Board meeting, they talked a little bit about one of the focuses of that group was to help combat isolation that some older adults feel in West Hollywood. And people have not only some non-usual suspects come out for that programming, but they are meeting up with each other afterwards. So they're meeting up for coffee and they're finding common interests in some of the memorabilia they collect or Broadway musicals or any number of things, and they're connecting over coffee. Sometimes they're inviting another neighbor. So those connections, kind of the web of that continues to grow. It's been so successful, it's going to actually transition into a regular standing program with the Jewish Family Service Comprehensive Services Center after the end of this year. So the program, the 6-month pilot was up actually last month, but the last thing we want to do is pull the plug on something around the holidays when people do feel increasingly isolated. So we'll continue to have programming in November and December, and then we'll see that transition over to Jewish Family Service. So it's been a great program, and we're really happy it's going to continue.
That's awesome.
That's great news.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Excellent.
So I'm going to move quickly through here. This is some of the survey findings, and we'll go through these fairly quickly. We saw significant increases in some of these categories. Older adults who reported using city's open spaces regularly, almost 80%.
That's amazing.
So that was an increase. That people feel like they know how to find information about health services, 85, almost 86%. That we can easily find information about social and community activities, almost 83%. Older adults who agree that West Hollywood is an age-friendly city, 79.4%. So that's some really good news.
Really good news.
And so those represent increases over the last year's survey. Now we're going to talk about some
Went up
places.
that much in 1 year?
Well, those are about 10% increases, 10 and then 12% increases over last year's survey.
Got it.
But those are good numbers.
Yeah.
And now we're going to talk about some numbers where we feel like we have some challenges. So This is, again, the survey of older adults. This isn't the staff or the advisory board or commission survey results, just older adults. Feel overall quality of life in West Hollywood is very good or excellent, 63.5. And then the next two speak to safety. So the first is safety of their neighborhood as very or somewhat safe. And the second is the city as a whole is very or somewhat safe. And those you can see are right around 50%, 52.9, and then 46.6. That is concerning, and I think it mirrors what you've expressed, what this board expressed in the community study focus group. One of the things that we are looking at as as the Aging in Place initiative was put together, there are 8 domains that are recommended from the World Health Organization and AARP. What we want to bring to this conversation is, as we've connected with AARP and other cities, and as we see this data, what we would like to do, and we hope the board will support, is adding a domain for our initiative and another point of evaluation, and that domain would be public safety and emergency preparedness.
And Corey, can we add too, if it's possible, when we're asking these questions and the perception, is their perception of safety because they've had an incident or because they've seen an incident, or it's just a feeling? Like, that would be data I would want to know personally, like if they are a victim or if it's just something of note, like a feeling.
Okay, we'll take a look at that. This is just perception. The question is
It's
designed to be
perceived.
perception.
Yeah.
But that's certainly something we could look into with the survey instrument as well. But that is part of our response to seeing that, is that we would like to add this domain and provide some additional content there, and then maximize the work that our public safety department is already doing, but also kind of hold ourselves up for some evaluation there as well. These were some good findings. We also saw an increase in the number of older adults who felt like they knew what it means for a city to be age-friendly. We did not see that same increase from city staff or from the advisory boards and commissions. We also did not see the same level of response to the survey. We didn't have as many people participate in the survey from those two groups as we did the previous year. So that's something we'll be looking at. There was outreach and multiple emails sent, but what else we need to do to make sure that we continue to have a good response to the survey, because that's the baseline that gives us the same information year over year.
Is this different than the one that we received that was a call to the community?
That was the community study survey. So
Okay.
yes, we like to survey, but that was a different one.
Okay, sorry.
So that
You
this
know,
one was like in
I don't
June.
think I did this.
This was probably in June that you would
I
have
don't
received
think
this.
I did it, so I'm one of those people. I'm sorry, Corey.
And make sure next year that 100% from the
Take the
WAP.
community one that just
I
came out.
did. They called
Yeah.
me.
The community.
I think one of the really important issues regarding our older adults is to make sure in the first place that we can keep them living in West Hollywood. It's great to have all the programs, of course, but first of all, we must make sure that they can stay and live here independently. So obviously, housing is the first issue. So we want to make sure that they are protected and that because of housing crises, they are not pushed out because of rents going up and such issues. So I think that housing and making sure there's secure housing is really important.
I agree.
Because the big principle that we need to look at, of course, we appreciate all the programs, but what we need to look at it is from the point of view of how important and how much the older adults contribute. It's not so much what we do for as what they are doing for us. So the main thing is to give them the tools, such as being able to stay living here independently, food insecurity, transportation, whatever it is, because we are very lucky to have older adults with brilliant minds, and it's not because they are older that they contribute less, it's the contrary. So I think if we go from that main principle as we work, that will be really important. It's not what we do for, it's what they do for us.
And I didn't even ask Nadia to set this up this way. But what we wanted to also share with you is some of the things that have been happening in the year 3 implementation, and some of those are included in the staff report. But one of those was actually the city was invited to participate in a recent AARP regional roundtable, and the focus was housing and looking at housing resources and the challenges of affordable housing for older adults, not just in West Hollywood, but throughout Los Angeles County, actually throughout the state. So this is an AARP California group looking statewide at real housing challenges for people, but specifically LA County and the Bay Area being really very challenging for people to stay in their housing. And that's just another way that all of the kind of initiatives that this division is
Prop 10
looking
we're
at
going through is on,
really
yeah.
tie together. And so part of what we're able to do with the Aging in Place initiative is we now monitor those contracts for the Comprehensive Services Center as well as the JFS Nutrition Program. And that program provides meals at congregate sites like Palmer Park and some of the HUD buildings, but they also do the home delivered meals. And so we are working closely with those folks, but it's looking through that lens of making sure that people can try to stay in the housing they have. And so we are kind of at that ground floor working with people directly. We just were sharing at the Human Services Commission meeting tonight. We had 3 seniors in a building who were facing rent increases on Section 8 vouchers that were coming from the landlord, and we had to figure out a way to try to provide some support for them to go through the hearing process, to look at what other kind of avenues we could do, because if they lost their housing in West Hollywood, there was no way that they could replicate the housing here even with a Section 8 voucher. And so looking at those kind of really direct, right up in your face kind of issues, as well as kind of the bigger picture policy issues, is part of the work. The part of the work that we're doing. One of the other things that we heard from you in the community study process was about caregiver resources and what those might look like. And we are in the process, we're at the very beginning of this process of developing a very kind of specialized, localized caregiver resource. And so we've had conversations with AARP has some really interesting resources, so we're looking to collaborate and share and steal information from all the ones that we like and things that look like they would be helpful. So that's one of the other pieces that's moving forward within the Aging in Place initiative. Like I shared with you, that we want to add the domain of public safety and emergency preparedness and really engage our public safety folks in a different way about and have them look through that kind of lens of aging as well. And then one of the last things I want to share with you, because I know that we're running close on time, is that just last weekend, so there's a lot of momentum that's happening with this as we're still trying to staff the division up and move things forward, but we had an opportunity. I'm going to embarrass Jenny a little bit, but Jenny helped us get connected to Maria Shriver's Women's Alzheimer movement through some of the work that Jenny had done with them. And we had a conversation last Thursday. It was Thursday late afternoon. They were getting ready to participate in the National League of Cities conference that happened here in Los Angeles. And they were talking about they wanted to present these 5 things cities could do. And this wasn't timed for that. It was a call we'd been trying to schedule for months, actually, and Jenny stayed on it. But they kind of shared with us what those 5 things were going to be. We're doing some of those things already, and the other ones are good ideas. And we just said, how are you getting people to sign on? We'll sign on. And they were like, we just wanted to tell them what they could do. So we said, we will sign on. Like, let's sign on. We will commit to doing those 5 things. And then they were going to be able to announce that and challenge other cities. And so on Saturday, so after this Thursday afternoon conversation, on Saturday, they did share at the League of Cities that West Hollywood was the first city to sign on as a city partner to commit to being an Alzheimer's and dementia-friendly city. And then we also helped them connect to the city of Los Angeles, and not to be outdone, Mayor Garcetti and the city of LA signed on because a little pressure from the little city that could. And so we're really excited about those kind of partnerships that we're developing and really deepening with organizations like the AARP and the Women's Alzheimer Movement. And we're also part of the Los Angeles Community Health and Aging Group, and I'm not getting the right name of that one, but we're really trying to be out there and get more information about best practices, good programming, and other initiatives that we can bring back to the city of West Hollywood. So we look forward to the year 3 evaluation looking a little different than some of these numbers, and hopefully still holding where we're strong, but hopefully improving on some of the areas where we had some numbers that we're not all that excited about, and we want to see those increase. So happy to answer any questions you may have. And you have the draft report that will go to council on November 19th. And then once we have feedback from the boards and from the Human Services Commission, which we got earlier this evening, we'll finalize the report and share that with everyone as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Corey.
Well, we thank you for the amazing work that you've been doing recently. We're very impressed, and we thank you.
Thank you.
And we hope that our older adult community can communicate with you and really work with you on those projects. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Vice Chair Luby and I were discussing, just because of time, if we would like to maybe be able to touch on some of these items that we have on our agenda and move them to other meeting dates so we don't cram them in and we actually get to discuss them. Like, I'm not sorry with the direction that we've headed in. I feel like we've done so much work that,
We have.
yeah. So if we want to move the well, actually, the National History Month banners, we can move that to next time and work on that. We'll table that. And then basically, this was something we can kind of work on right now, which is on the 25th anniversary of the Women's Advisory Board. We kind of wanted to touch on this on our agenda, just to kind of like put a pin in it of closure that we've celebrated our 25th year, that, you know, we feel like we addressed and celebrated and did everything we need to do, and that we don't really need to keep do it, like that's over now. But if anybody wanted to bring up things that we need to push forward with it or things in the future, but if not, that's kind of why that's on the agenda. Yeah. Is there anything anyone want to discuss on that one? Or no? No.
To another 25 years, ladies.
Yes. And we had a bit of a lengthy report that was going to happen with legislation of advocacy, but I don't believe that's going to end up happening this evening. So we can kind of table that as well and touch base on all of these items, especially since we just had the election, and basically so we're not missing things by rushing them through. So then we can move on to board and commission liaison reports. Are we comfortable in moving that to that point, you guys?
Sure.
You are? Okay, wonderful. Is it,
Make motions on that.
oh yeah, do we want to make a motion to do all that, you guys? That would be great.
Marissa, do we need to make a motion?
Do we need to make a motion if we're not making action on anything?
If you want to officially table, so basically you're tabling.
I can't hear you. Oh,
I'm sorry.
that's okay.
I'm sorry. So you're proposing to table several items?
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was following. So perhaps to take a formal action to do so,
I'd like to make,
several items.
Hey, guys. Hey.
I'd like to make a formal action that we table item 6C, Women's History Month celebration, and also everything that's falling under legislation and advocacy until next month.
Can we get one of those sexy seconds?
I'll second.
Can I get some ayes?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Wonderful. We have formally done the work we needed to do on that. So now we'll move on to board and commissioner liaison reports. Does anyone want to we'll start first with the Women in Film Speakers Series. Oh, wait, sorry, I jumped. I don't see.
Oh, it's on the second.
Where is it?
It's at the
8
top
is
of.
board and
I know, it jumps. Where'd it go? Help me.
so it's board and commission liaison reports, and then here it is.
Will be a brief reports from board members who serve as liaisons to other city boards, commissions, and other recognized bodies, and the board will designate new liaisons as needed. What ones do we have?
I don't have any comments.
Yeah.
Does it?
I don't have any.
I don't.
Okay, fantastic. So then we'll actually move on to subcommittee and liaison reports. And so,
Monthly report.
monthly.
We got to do that. Don't we have a list? Who's next up on the list
For the
for the
monthly
monthly reporting to city council?
I think someone was chosen for December, if I'm not
Yes.
incorrect, and it's on our minute.
Who was it?
Yeah, I think it's me.
It's you?
Yeah,
Okay.
for this next month, right?
Know your mission. Do you choose to accept it?
No, can you explain it again? I'd love that.
So basically, what we do is, wait, who was giving the one for November?
Me. Oh, no.
Did you do it? Wait, what?
No, I was October.
You were October?
Yeah.
Who was November?
We are in
We
November.
are in November. So you're going to do November? Or who did November?
Larissa can provide information at a later time if you have further questions.
Okay.
Just keeping time in mind.
Yeah. We're okay.
Chair Lube was November.
Ooh.
Well, I will be doing November. I can also talk to you about how to do it.
Okay, so now we actually are going to move on to subcommittee and liaison reports. The Women in Film Speaker Series. Did anyone attend the Women in Film Speaker Series? Nobody did this. You did?
Wait, no, I'm sorry. I'm maybe getting my months squared away. No, I did. I did,
Okay.
and it was wonderful. I'm sorry. you
Don't
guys.
be apologetic.
Uh,
Life is hard right now. None of us can breathe. It's okay.
hard. Yeah, I did have an opportunity to attend, and it was wonderful. It was a great panel discussion focusing on, I'm pulling from my memory banks now, actually focus on women in advocacy in film, and it was outstanding. One of the most memorable panelists for me was the woman that created the Pussy Hat Project was there, like dressed in full gear. It was phenomenal. It was absolutely fantastic, and exactly kind of the panel discussion to be listening to right before we went into the election cycle. So it was great.
And then the Women's Safety Joint Subcommittee. That's you and Amanda,
Yes,
right?
that's Amanda and Nadia and myself. And I have 2 updates, but Nadia, do you? Okay. So I think our next meeting, first of all, is December 5th. So we'll have more to report for our December meeting on that. However, Nadia and Amanda and I all participated in the Halloween Carnival
I saw
on
your
behalf of the
pictures.
city and on behalf of the Women's Safety Joint Safety Subcommittee. And we wore the sexual assault campaign banners.
We were walking
thanks to
billboards.
Larissa. We were walking billboards. That's exactly what we were. And we got a lot of people asking us questions and talking to us about the campaign. And, you know, we thought that a lot of people had already seen it in the city because it's been on coasters and sort of around, but a lot of people hadn't. And I also think that there were a lot of new people that came into the city. So I think it made a lot of people think.
Yeah.
We spoke with some news outlets, and it was great.
Yeah,
Nadia.
I think it was amazing. We thought we might not have a great response because of the carnival atmosphere, and people came to us and asked us questions and really, really communicated and wanted our information, which was wonderful. And we also talked to some of the businesses along the way, and we had some great interaction with the sheriffs, which was absolutely delightful.
We did.
Yes.
That's
And they
fantastic.
really appreciated us because they realized we are working with them on
Exactly.
the issue. And we did some great photo ops.
I saw Nadia. You looked great.
Nice wigs.
Thank you.
And then WAB Club Women in Books. Karen, did you go to that?
No, it was on election day.
Yeah. You were doing.
But I'll be at the
Yeah.
next one. Do you know, Larissa, do you happen to know what the next book is?
No.
Okay, I'll be looking into that.
Okay, cool. And then the Vagina Monologues presented by Hollywood Now. Do we have any touch base updates on that?
Just, we are moving forward, and it's going to be great. February 16th and 17th, I want to say. But,
I'm
yeah.
excited.
2 shows.
Oh, yeah.
Expect them to be sold out.
I do too. And then the Advocacy Training Project.
I can provide an update on that.
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
I've committed to attending all 6 this year. I've attended the first 2, and they have been they're outstanding, absolutely amazing. The first one was focused on presenting your advocacy message. The second one was all about writing an op-ed, and the second one was challenging to the extent it was amazing to sit in a room and really be forced to defend your position. Like, it made my palms sweat.
I'm excited for you to do the one that's like the social media one.
That's happening next.
I'm just going to tell you, in that one, it's very basic. So your assistant, you'll actually be able to help people in the room. That's what I found.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
But it's been, I would say it's an interesting to see. It's not the same people in each one. I'm excited to see who shows up at the next. It's ranged anywhere between, like 5 and 12 people. Just really outstanding. I highly recommend it to everyone.
Well,
Next one is what? December 9th?
I will pull up the date on my calendar
Sunday?
really quick.
while Mel's doing that, you guys all know this, but the community may not know this. I'm a huge proponent for the Advocacy Training Project because if I hadn't attended that and sat next to Karen, I would actually not be on this board. It was because of that. I was there and Karen was sitting next to me and she was like, there's an open seat on our board and you should totally go for it. And that is how that happened.
And
Amazing.
thanks, Karen. Thanks for that. And to confirm, you're right. As Mama Karen knows, the date is December 9th, and it's from 2 to 5. Really, truly, I thought it was going to be great, but it's fucking outstanding. Like, it's amazing. So I encourage everybody to attend. The end.
It's actually one of the greatest things I've ever done for myself.
Well, and even as someone, I will say I described it as I feel like I'm in a position where I'm walking and crawling and running all the time, serving on a board, being an advocate, and learning as you go. And it's just such an outstanding reminder and really
I'm telling you
hands-on.
that there are tools in my tool belt that I utilize so often in all aspects of my life from this training project.
Well, and to the extent that it's not even, it's related to day-to-day life too. Like just how to better advocate for yourself as a human, let alone just in advocacy. Okay, now I'm done.
What? Don't say sorry. I loved every second of that. And then, what was that? Oh, we have now moved on to public comment, and we actually have a public comment from the fantastic, I don't know her, John Erickson. Welcome, friend.
Start the timer.
Yeah, just so you know, you have 30 minutes.
She's like, and go. Hi, everyone. I'm John. I am no longer your liaison to the LGAB because I got appointed to planning. So that means that I just have more work. But I want to come and speak to you, not in any of those official capacities, because we need to make note of whatever hat we're wearing. I just want to come and say, as a resident, and I want to really thank you for all the work you do. I know it's obviously work I'm really passionate about, and it's work that's needed. I don't think I've seen an agenda so packed before, filled with so many consequential things that you are doing, from legislation, from policy initiatives, from being out on the boulevard during Halloween, to talking about all the policies and issues impacting women in our community. I want to thank Jenna for talking about the real obstacle women and even lesbian women who are supposed to be a part of this LGBT rainbow in WeHo City face when going into Boys Town. I hate that term for Boys Town because I think it's not inclusive of actually the community that we actually have here. So I really want to thank you for saying that, because that's the important work that you're doing. That's the important work that's being done all over, and it's being spearheaded by this board. And I know each and every one of you. I'm so proud of all of you. I want to specifically give a specific shout out to Karen for all the work that she did at the Westside Democratic Headquarters for the past, I don't know, 4 months in making sure that the legislative victories that we saw on Tuesday, there was an hour there for a second where I almost had a heart attack, but they came in and they are still coming in. Josh Harder won his race. He unseated the person as of tonight. Katie Porter's now ahead, and Gil Cisneros is within the 700 votes. We could literally be taking back the Orange County, and they wouldn't. This would be since like 1926 or 1936 that they would not have representatives in Congress. But you think local and you act global, and a lot of the work does start here with this very board. And so I would encourage, because this is a televised meeting, many of the members of the community to come see the work that you actually are doing, because it applies to all boards and all commissions. And I just want to thank you, because as a resident, my life is better because of this board, and I think a lot of people's lives are better because of this board. So I just wanted to, after coming down from one board meeting up the hill, up San Vicente, literally running down here and making sure I could spend a little time with you. And specific shout out to my best friend Amanda. It's great to see you in that chair position.
Oh.
Thank
Thank you.
Items from the board. Let's start with Karen.
Sure. We just had a great election, and we have a lot of new women going to Washington to represent us, and not just women, but women of all kinds of diverse backgrounds, which is great. I'm just so thrilled about that. I'm just so thrilled with the results of the election. I also wanted to mention that coming out later this month is a memoir by one of our West Hollywood residents, who is a legendary feminist, 92-year-old Ivy Bottini. Her book is coming out. You can actually pre-order it from Barnes & Noble, and the book is called The Liberation of Ivy Bottini, A Memoir of Love and Activism, and it's going to be a great read.
Oh, she's writing down her book. I just, before I forget, holidays are coming. Just, share the love with all the people around you. Smile, even if you don't know the person. You don't know what a person's going through. And then just, I feel special every time I come to the meetings, because I get to serve with you guys. And, what John says really touches home. And the presentations that we had earlier, I do some of the work behind some of the things that we listened to today through my profession. So, yeah, that's it.
I don't think I can top those two. So I'm just going to say happy Thanksgiving, and I will see you all in December.
You?
I don't want to top that at all. It is an honor, obviously, to serve with you. And I think I'm constantly reminded, as we had a very light and a very heavy week last week. I think a lot of us were left excuse me, feeling pretty raw as a result of everything that we saw happening. And I always find solace in our community. Like, I always think about the really great community that we've built here, whether it's, judging a costume contest in Plummer Park, or, being able to stand with my sisters and serve our community this way. So to echo the sentiments, I'm always just happy to come and be with you guys.
Jenner. Samesies. Know that. I actually have some very exciting news. I am the executive producer and creative director for Equality Now's first social video ad campaign.
That's amazing!
And a lot of the framing that I'm using is coming from this board directly, and all of the stats and information that we constantly get presented to us is all sort of rolling into that. And so I'm really hoping that it goes viral and we rule the world.
Great.
Amazing.
I'm so pumped with the women that we have elected. I can't tell you. We had our Equal Rights Amendment meeting yesterday, And we have one more state to pass, and we are working on Virginia and Arizona. And we found out that in Virginia, very conservative Virginia, 3 women have been appointed to Congress. Isn't that amazing? So we are going there, and we are going to support these women, and we should all send them emails and tell them how proud. We should send our congratulations to all those women who have been appointed and let them know how much we appreciate them. That would be a great idea. Send them a card, let them know you're fabulous and we support you.
Thank you, Nadia.
Amanda?
I will tell you there's a couple things. One, listen to your bodies and please take care of your health. There's a lot of really hard things happening right now in our air and in our environment. And I recently got that cold and got pneumonia because I didn't listen to my body and I kept pushing and my body was real mad. So if you don't listen to your body and take care of your body, you can't do this work, and we all need you. So please all take care of yourselves. The other thing is, in those moments where I was like, couldn't move, couldn't whatever, I really, really missed you guys so immensely. I love you all so incredibly much. I am so proud to serve with you. It is an absolute pleasure to be by your side and to do this work, and it never feels like work. You guys are absolutely my family. You will be my family forever, and I hope you know that I am always here for all of you because I love you guys very much. Now, items from staff, please. Which I love you guys very much too. Just so you know, the staff of West Hollywood is incredible, and we wouldn't be able to do any of this work without you, so we appreciate you immensely.
Thank you. Just 2 really quick items. One, you all have been receiving notifications regarding ethics training, AB 1234, and I just wanted to do a quick reminder. It's something required every 2 years. You can do it online. The city is hosting something later this month, and you've all received that information. But I know there are some. If you're not sure that it's your turn to do it because everybody's on different has different appointment dates and different times when you've actually done the training. It's every 2 years, and so you can just check with me, and I can confirm if you're supposed to be doing it or not, because everybody doesn't have to do it this year. So you don't need to do it if you don't need to do it. But another message is that you do need to sort of track it, and the way of tracking it is, if you don't remember, is to check in with the city clerk. You can also check in with staff. But what you can anticipate is that we're not necessarily going to say, "Oh, it's your turn," when it's announced that at the end of the year, the deadline is January, by January to do it. We'll say that, but you'll want to keep track of, oh, well, I did it 2 years ago. I remember that, and I'll take care of it. And here's the ways you can do it. So if that makes sense. So just let me know if you need the information or you're not quite sure if you have to take it. I will let you know. Thank you. And then the second item is your next meeting is your retreat meeting, your annual retreat meeting. And it will be on December 6th, Thursday, December 6th, 6 p.m. We'll be at Plummer Park in rooms 5 and 6. And there'll be a short business meeting followed by a retreat format. And you've already given input on what you'd like to focus on, so we'll be prepping for that. And also, last year's interactive potluck was very well received, so that is also, I believe, something you'll want to have happen again.
What time is it?
6 p.m. So come hungry, and also I'll be following Plummer Park, rooms 5 and 6. And I'll be following up with regarding the meeting arrangements, and you'll get everything written in notification in advance. But again, your retreat meeting is next. So, and everybody said they could be there, so we're looking forward to having you. So,
Yeah.
Well, ladies, I believe our time here has come to an end. So we will be adjourning this meeting this evening at 9:11 p.m. with my fancy pink gavel.